everyone's doing okay today. It's sunnier today, so that's always good. So I've zoomed in a little bit today. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully it's not too blurry. Good afternoon. So maybe while we're waiting for other people to join, I'll get you started on the warm-up. So today's warm-up, if you remember from last week, I took a bunch of random objects. I think last week I gave you 2 random objects and I asked you to combine them into one new invention. So today I have a bunch of random objects. There are 2 types of random objects, and I would like you to combine them in new and interesting ways. So try to think outside the box. Okay, so hopefully your pencils and pens are ready. You have paper. Here are the objects that I randomly found today. Some mini pipettes. I'm gonna put some white paper down so you can see it. Mini pipettes. And these random buttons here. Okay, so these are your random objects. As a really quick warm-up, what can you invent with those things in a doodle? Maybe you can think of multiple things right off the bat. Think about the shapes, how you might transform them, how you might recombine them. It's just a little warm-up as we're waiting for a couple more people. So these little pipettes. Again, these buttons. Try to doodle some new inventions with those objects. You might choose one of the objects as your main shape. You might have 2 of the objects as the main shape. You might choose to alter the shape of one of the objects. There's no wrong answer. You're just playing around and trying to invent something new with these objects. It is hard. It's kind of challenging, but it's good to practice thinking outside the box. And sometimes it's hard to get started, but then once you get going, you find you don't want to stop. Well, yeah, it's April Fool's Day. Happy April Fool's Day. Okay, so hopefully I gave you a bit of time and you were able to invent something. Remember, you can always go back to it later, and I would love for you to share them in the comments or on the group if you would like to. So for today, move those things out of the way. For today, we are going to practice drawing from a reference picture again. So I thought we would draw Princess Peach. So here's my reference picture. And if you remember, the first thing we always do is we try to look at the shapes. So looking at Princess Peach, she has kind of an egg-shaped face. and a pretty small upper body, and then she has this big puffy dress. So let's try to draw those basic shapes in first, and then we'll worry about her arms and her hair and her crown and other details after that. So I usually start with the head. So her head is roughly circular, oval. Her chin's kind of pointy. You can add that in if you like, or you can make her cuter and chubbier in the cheeks. So head, and if you compare the circle or the oval shape of her body to the shape of her head, you might notice that they're similar but a little bit smaller. So let's draw her torso a little bit smaller. Okay, and then her dress starts with kind of a round shape like that. You can imagine it as either a triangle and then add in the little puffy parts, or you can think of it as a rounded part and then a little triangular bottom. Okay, so how's that so far? Not too fast today? So I'll review one more time here. Did the head shape, I looked at the body shape, and I looked at the dress shape. Yeah, her dress is like a bell. That is another good description. Her bell-shaped dress. Okay? Hopefully that's okay so far. And so if we look now at some of the smaller details, there is this puffy sleeve that's like right next to the body here. So let's add a little round shape for the puffy shape here. And her hand's covering it here, but you can still imagine there is another one on the other side. Okay. So, main shapes, head, body, the bell shape of the dress, and then I just added these little circles for the puffy sleeves. Okay. And so if we're moving on, let's add a bit of her hair. So her hair, if you imagine this as a triangle, you can draw a quick triangle as a reference. And you can round it out afterwards. So triangle, and maybe like some banana shapes off to the side. Like a banana. A fat banana though. Banana. Another kind of a banana behind. She has these sideburns that come down. So I'm following the shape of the face a little bit, and on the other side. And then, before I draw the back of her hair, I'm gonna draw in her giant earrings. So if you look, it's right next to where the sideburns are. So again, it's just a circle, and there's one on the other side. Okay, and to draw this kind of shape here, There's a couple ways you can do it. You can look at the big basic shapes. So it's kind of like a rectangle behind her. And or you can also look at the way that the line is drawn on the reference picture. You can practice it a couple times above your paper and then try to mimic that onto your own drawing. Okay, so I'm kind of practice drawing over top, on top, and then I'm trying to copy that motion onto my drawing. So I just did this little J shape, and then there's this little curve down here for the bottom part of that bit of her hair. So if you practice, it kind of curves that way. So from there, it curves that way. Okay, and then same thing for here. You can think it goes this way and makes kind of like an S shape there. Does that make sense? So I'm kind of ghosting the movement, and then I'm copying that movement over here. You can do that with any of the bits. Okay. Hopefully that's good so far. A little bit slower. So I'll just do a quick review while you guys catch up then. The head shape here is what we started with. And then we kind of blocked in the rest of her body shape. So torso here and her bell-shaped dress. Thank you for that description. That was super helpful. Okay. And then we kind of blocked in what her hair is using some basic shapes. So this was kind of like a triangle. And then we talked about how these look kind of like bananas going off to the sides. I think there's a little bit more here, so I'll add some more hair. We added her earrings, which are circles. And then for this complicated hairline shape, we practiced drawing over top, and then we copied that motion onto our drawing. Okay? So moving on a little bit, we're going to add in her arms and her hands a little bit. So if you imagine her hand as a little oval, her little oval is covering part of her sleeve and part of her torso up here. So I'm gonna try to copy that position. So that's her hand. And if you look at the basic shape of her arm here, it's a little oval. And I like to kind of measure. I like to measure where the elbow is in relation to the rest of the body to help me with her proportions. So if you can imagine a straight line from her elbow, it looks like it goes to her waist. So when I'm drawing this basic shape, I'm going to draw it from the wrist down to that line that is at the waist. Okay, so right there. So her elbow kind of rests on this imaginary line at her waist. Okay, so just double checking, can you hear me if I talk this loud? Okay, so that's one elbow, and if you look, her other elbow is kind of at the same level So we'll just make sure her elbows are at the same level. So there's this part of her arm, and then this arm goes outward. And you can use the same kind of strategy. You can kind of draw over top in the air and then copy that motion to get kind of the same angle. So drawing over top, kind of the angle is like that, and then I'll draw in my shape, which is like a oval or a sausage shape. Okay, and then her hand, I'm going to simplify to just an oval for now. Okay, I hope you're doing okay following along. So this other part of her arm that we didn't draw yet because it's beneath or below, behind this arm is just this part of her arm. You can just draw that in there. You might not see it depending on your guidelines, which is okay. Okay. And then, what else are we missing? We're missing her crown. Her crown, there's a couple ways you can think of this too. You can think of it as 3 triangles, or you can think of it as a rectangle and then put in the notches after. So I think to make sure I have kind of the right size, I'm going to draw it as a rectangle and then put in the notches after. So the sides of my rectangle, and I'm going to curve it a little bit. And then I'm going to put in the notches. And then you can erase the part that you don't need. Fix your shape. Okay. And you can put in the gems. And the gems are just circles. Okay. Another detail she has is a gem in the center of her torso here, and it's beneath her hand. So you will draw just part of it, and it will be covered partially by the hand. Okay, and if you look, it's 2 lines. One line for like the blue part, and then another line to show that there's a yellow part. You can do that if you want. My pencil's kind of not sharp enough to do it too well here, but you get the idea. Okay, and another detail is her collar here. So she has a collar, and it looks like it's a little bit frilly, so it looks like this kind of pattern to me. So you can draw that into her collar. And let's add this little puffy detail on her dress. So looking at her torso again, kind of where these 2 shapes connect. You can see this triangular connection, so I'm gonna draw that in here. So there's kind of like a triangle. And then this puffy part is like an oval on this side. And that puffy part is smaller, kind of an oval, but this part's straighter. Okay, and I think my Princess Peach is a little bit shorter, so when I draw the bottom of her dress, I'm just gonna add a little bit of trim, which is like this darker pink part here. Okay, so her dress, again, when we did our rough shapes, it was kind of straighter, but if you look at the picture, it looks like it flares out a little bit. So if you wanted to use that same strategy, kind of draw on top, see how it curves, and then try to recapture that motion onto your drawing. So it flares out a little bit. And this one, it looks like it's mostly straight down, and then it flares out the opposite way a little bit. So I'm going to try to mimic that. Okay. And then same thing for the bottom of the dress. For the dress, it looks like there's some pleats here. I don't know if you can see it very well from the video, but there's a line here, there's a line here, and there's a line here. And if you look at the bottom, that's kind of how the lines connect here. So it curves in into that line, goes out and into that line, out and in to that line, and then out and into the edge of the dress. So I'm going to try to think about the relationship between this line and redraw that line kind of in the same spot. If it's not totally the same, that's fine. You're not a photocopier. Okay, and then this one to this one. You can also look at other parts that you've drawn as guides. I try to see if there's any connections or some intersections that I can use to measure. So I think if I could continue that line, it would go to the center. So I'm going to roughly draw another line here. And then this line looks like it might be kind of right under her elbow. So I'm going to use that as my guide. You just use whatever guide makes sense to you in your drawing. Okay. And then for the bottom of the dress, you're just going to go out and in using those lines, those vertical lines as a guide. So out and in, out and back in, out and back in, and then like that. Okay, and then there's this dark pink part, so you can just follow that one more time and just give it a little edge here. Okay, so now that you have most of her body and her dress, you can finish details that were kind of hidden, like the rest of her hair. Okay, so we're just gonna continue. Her hair goes behind, and there's a little bit of hair here as well. And it looks like it goes like a J shape as well. J shape. And then in a little bit, and then down again. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense still. Again, we're looking at shapes. We're practicing drawing curves before we draw it on our own drawing. Okay, and here's the face. So her face, her two eyes are kind of ovals, and they're pretty big. So let's see. It's kind of in between those windows formed by her hair. So let's try to draw lightly at first so that you can fix the position if you need to. So I'm gonna draw roughly, looks like it might be there. Okay, it's a little bit dark. I need to sharpen my pencil. Okay, so roughly there, and from the picture, if this is your basic shape for her eye, it looks like the top lid is darker, like that, and then there's a smaller oval inside, with a little shine spot. And then another darker circle for the pupil. And if you have pencil crayons, you can color that in blue. And then she has a bunch of small eyelashes that are kind of equal distance apart like that. Okay, of course you can give her different eyes too, but if you want to kind of go with what you see here, you can do it that way. I'm gonna see if I can do it with my not sharp pencil. When you're drawing, you might want to draw bigger, then it'll be a little bit easier. So her eyes. Leave the shiny spot. And then color in the center beneath the shiny spot. Eyelashes. And her nose. I'm gonna simplify it. It can go like that for a nose. So I'm just going like that. You can also go like that, or you can make it triangular. You can experiment with what kind of nose looks best on your drawing. And then her lips. Okay, in her drawing, it looks like kind of an upside down triangle with the corners turned up a little bit, and then her lip goes like that and like that. I just couldn't do that because my drawing's really small. Okay, so those are kind of all the basics in. Now you can go through and kind of darken the parts that you are sure of. Oh, also her what are they called? Gloves. Looks like they split here. So you can show she's wearing gloves. Okay, I think I'm gonna change to a marker to outline some stuff so you can see. Okay, so try to start with what's on top first so you don't have to do a lot of erasing. So this is her hand that we drew, and her elbow, and then this gem on her dress, and this sleeve, the collar, okay, and then I'm just following the lines that we already drew and kind of smoothing things out as I go. So this little ball sleeve was behind, so make sure you don't go on top of your hand. Okay, and then this puffy part of the dress, and that puffy part of the dress, and her sleeve, or her gloves, sorry, her gloves. And you can either leave your hand as a circle, or if we take a closer look at the hand shape, her hand, if this is her basic shape, her thumb is pointing downwards this way, And her pointer finger is that way. And then you can see two fingers kind of behind. So you can try to redraw it here. Here's her thumb. And two fingers. If you want to draw the details of her hand. Hard to see because it's white on a white and gray background. Kind of like that. So I'll try to draw the basic shape of it here. Okay. And we'll fix her hair a little bit as we go too. So I'll round it out a little bit more. So all I'm doing is going over the lines that we drew, fixing a couple as I go if I need to. Okay, and the crown, because the jewels kind of stick out, I'm gonna try to draw the jewels first. And I'm just going over my pencil, so they'll be in the right position, and then I'll draw in the crown part of it. Okay, and her sideburns, or whatever you call them, little bits of hair. And her chin, I'm gonna make it a little bit pointier. And if there's a little gap, you can add the hint of a neck if you'd like. And her earrings. And then the lines of her hair that we worked so hard on. Okay, and the rest of her dress. And then all that's left is her face. Nose. I decided I don't like her lips, so I'm just gonna color that black. Okay, how's that? And then once you have everything outlined, you can erase your guidelines so you have clean line work for you to color if you wish. So here's all the guidelines that we used. Now that we've outlined, we don't need them anymore, and you're left with just that. Okay? So hopefully that was helpful and got you thinking about how you can draw your own favorite characters from reference pictures. Okay, so my challenge for you for today is to pick another character, find a reference picture, and keep practicing observing the basic shapes, drawing the basic shapes, and then figuring out how to draw the rest of the details on top of that. Okay, I would love to see your drawings whenever you're done and whenever you feel like sharing. Hope you have a great day. I will leave you with this inspirational quote for today. Painting is just another way of keeping a diary, and that's by Picasso. And actually doodling is a good way of keeping a diary as well. So I hope you keep doodling, and I'll see you tomorrow.